Hello and welcome to World Talks here on TVP World. I'm your host Benjamin Lee, and please join me and my guest on this next interview. A major new UK-Poland security treaty signed in London this week is being described as the biggest upgrade in bilateral defense ties in decades. The agreement expands cooperation on missile defense, cybersecurity, intelligence, and hybrid threats amid growing concerns over Russia and Europe's long-term security future. Joining us today on TVP World to discuss the wider geopolitical implication is Bartosz Kielak, correspondent from The Times contributor. Hello and welcome to TVP World.
Hello, Ben.
So we're looking at this treaty, which is now being presented as historic. But when it comes to concrete military capabilities, what does it actually entail, and what actually changed because of it?
Well, the treaty has been lauded by both Starmer and Prime Minister Tusk, Starmer, as a major generational uplift in security and defense. And among ministerial meeting and based, at a site commemorating the joint memory of our both nations going back to World War II and the fight against German bombers flying over London, over the British Isles. The leaders stressed that this will not only extend the existing cooperation and renew the security guarantees contained within Article 5 of NATO, but will also allow the two nations to work together on cybersecurity threats, on addressing migration pressures, on working towards its commitments on green energy as contained within the Paris Treaty. It will allow for exchanging technology, on working together on manufacturing. And to be fair, most of those were already happening. Most of those were already possible, even though Prime Minister Tusk hinted at that the treaty might actually contain security guarantees going beyond what was originally contained within NATO Article 5. The language of the treaty does not necessarily refer to that. It's still vital that countries like Poland and the UK, both staunch NATO allies, very much committed to preserving that transatlantic cooperation, placing the kind relationships with the US at the forefront of the foreign policy platform, are very committed to working within NATO going forward.
All right. Before going to sign the deal in London, Prime Minister Tusk on the tarmac actually mentioned that this deal will expand NATO's capabilities. But at the same time, a lot of talks in Europe is about having defensive autonomy if U.S. disengages from NATO as well. With this treaty, do you think that Poland is positioning itself sort of to have options, be it remaining in NATO and strengthen the alliance's capabilities, or if it needs to find more bilateral ties and work with other countries in case they don't find NATO as sustainable and reliable?
Both the UK and Poland in the past 2 years have signed a lattice of treaties with countries like Germany and France. We've seen Poland signing a Treaty of Nice last year between Emmanuel Macron, the French president, and Prime Minister Tusk. And if you were to read between the lines into what was said, apparently that's what the conservative daily newspaper in the UK, The Telegraph, is saying, that the French Rafale jet fighters will be capable of transporting nuclear weapons among the countries in Eastern Europe over which the French have extended their nuclear umbrella. If I remember correctly, the language of the treaty did not create such provision, and we know that the Foreign Minister Radosław Sikorski, that Prime Minister Tusk are not necessarily very keen on openly discussing such arrangements. Still, it is publicly being discussed by the press and the media, the experts as well, as a possibility that such dislocation of French nuclear arsenal and extending its protection over Eastern Europe is on the cards. The UK has signed a Kensington Treaty with Germany last year, which went further in its language than the one signed with Poland yesterday, actually going as far as creating new bilateral defense protections for the UK and Germany. And those are absolutely important. One thing that we've seen is over 150, over 160 treaties signed since the 2022 invasion of Ukraine by Russia, by European and NATO states. And those are in clear response to the danger that Russia has created. It's also absolutely vital to say that Keir Starmer and Donald Tusk yesterday have recognized Russia as the long-term strategic threat, and in that they are in unity.
And speaking about Russia being a long-term consistent threat, a lot of this treaty actually involves and emphasizes in this hybrid threats, things like cyber attacks, sabotage, infrastructure disruption, disinformation. But this is a security treaty at the end of the day. So does that mean that the UK, Poland is effectively recognizing these sort of threats as acts of warfare rather than just security nuances?
I spoke to a former national security advisor to the Polish president, Mr. Jacek Siwiera, yesterday. He's currently a radiological, biological, chemical domain threat expert. And he said that the UK in the past, 15, 16 years has come under attack from all of those biological, chemical, radiological domain threats, and most of those have been caused by Russia. There's been a poisoning, a radiological poisoning of a former Russian spy in London, Mr. Litvinenko. There's been a Novichok attack in the UK. So those kind of threats is something that the UK is obviously very conscious of and very much aware of. And Mr. Siwiera, in conversation with me, has pointed that Poland, as a technological provider, finds this a very potent ground to work with a country very much conscious of those threats existing and looking for ways to address it. There's a wealth of expertise to be exchanged there. Secondly, speaking to the Polish Deputy Prime Minister, Mr. Gawkowski, last year, he said that Poland is coming under 300 cyber security threats, basically a digital war waged by Russia over Poland every single day. That Russia is trying to attack, public utilities, it's trying to sabotage water companies, it's trying to sabotage energy companies in Poland. And that's a story that's being repeated all across Europe with all the different countries. And UK is not really in a position comfortable enough to discard that as a potential threat. So that's another area where the two prime ministers will be seeking to cooperate and create a framework where countries can exchange expertise. And we obviously have to take into the account the fact that the UK has some of the best secret services and security services in the world. Lastly, but obviously not less important, is the fact that Prime Minister Tusk has made it one of the main policy goals to address migration pressures that that Europe is facing. In an interview with me late last year, he said that he's working closely with leaders of Italy, Giorgia Meloni, and then a leader in Denmark. Obviously, right now there's a new government forming in Denmark, but Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen has been working closely with Prime Minister Tusk on migration reform, pan-European migration reform, and that's something that's also very close to Keir Starmer's electoral promises, and the two leaders have agreed on that as well. And no less, there's obviously the green transition, and even though that subject is not without controversy, neither in Poland nor in the UK, that clauses related to that particular issue are also contained within the treaty.
Right. Last but not least, when we look at this treaty, if we look at it 5, 10 years down the line, could agreements like this one gradually transform NATO from a single alliance to a sort of more layer system of different integrated regional defense blocs within the alliance itself?
I think it's really important, and that's something that Donald Tusk has pointed to, speaking to the media before departing for London yesterday. And leaders were very careful in how they communicated this treaty, that everything is happening within NATO, nothing is happening outside of NATO. The two leaders are very, very committed to NATO as a platform for this mutual defense and security cooperation. And you know, there's a lot that can be said about the language of the treaty being too careful, not much changing after all, but the fact that the two countries within NATO are forming this core of states cooperating closer together, as Polish Prime Minister has pointed to, it creates a framework for the UK to respond quicker if something should happen on the Polish borders. It creates the possibility for Poland to also respond quicker before all the other NATO states react. The logic that NATO unity is under threat is not lost on the two countries, despite the insistence on behalf of the two leaders on placing relations with the United States among the top foreign policy priorities. We've seen, you know, the US backing out from Europe. There's been an announcement that they'll be pulling out troops from Germany. Poland has been caught off guard by the announcement that a rotational presence of US troops on Polish soil will be.
Perhaps that's one of the reasons why we have to introduce more nuance within the alliance itself as well. Thank you so much for your input and insight. Really appreciate it, and thanks for being with us on TVP World.
Thanks, Ben.
Cheers. And thank you for tuning into this edition of World Talks. But for more news, update, and commentary, please stay tuned to TVP World.